Alrighty, let me try to get this started. Buenísimo. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sincerely Verolina channel. Hey, I am Sverolina. The S stands for several things, but you, my friend from the other side of the screen, you may call me Sovereign. S is fine too. Now, you are listening to the Things I Never Said poetry series. On this channel, I discuss personal development, relationship dynamics, and in this particular series, my testimony as a foster child turned emancipated minor. So, if any of those topics interest or relate to you, then feel free to take a virtual seat in the comments section and engage with the video. During this podcast, I am going to discuss a poem that I wrote called Wild Child. This poem is in my collection titled Things I Never Said. If you would like to read along with me or to add the collection to your bookshelf, then click on the link in the description below. Bueno, vamos a comenzar. Alrighty. So this poem titled Wild Child is on page 13 in my manuscript. It should be on page 13 for those of you who have a physical copy of the book. And for those of you who have Kindle, I'm really not sure what page it is on, but it's after the poem called Playdate Pensamientos. So if you are picking up on this video where we left off in the last one, just turn the page, girl, turn the page. Alrighty. I'm going to give you a few moments to go on and find page 13. Go ahead. Yes, yes. Oh, I should do like some festive music, like do 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 do. Hey, alrighty. Oh no. Okay, this poem is called Wild Child. Tell me I can't do it, just so that I can, with white teeth taunting you. To smile when you're being tested is to know that you've already passed. So tell me I won't, and I will bloom before you. Wild Child. Go ahead, girl. Yes, yes. Now this poem, as you can see, is very, very, very short. Wait, let me first by saying thank you for listening to my poem called Wild Child. Scene. Okay. So yes, this poem is very, very short. I like to keep it succinct sometimes. And with this poem, I really just had the intention of capturing the kind of child I was, or just the kind of attitude that I had. I was a very adventurous and free-spirited kind of child, as I mentioned in the podcast episode before this one about Playdate Pensamientos. If you haven't listened to that one, go ahead if you would like to. Because it's kind of relevant to this one. But yes, just to expound on what I said in the other one, I was the kind of child who really enjoyed trying new, exhilarating experiences. I think that as I grew, to recognize my five senses and stuff like that, I just wanted to try doing what all the other kids did. I was the baby of the family. The foster home that I grew up in had 8 children total. 4 of us were foster girls, and the other 4 were the grandchildren of my foster mother. My foster mother had 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter that lived with her in her home, and then her adult daughter lived with her, and then the 4 foster girls lived with her. And as the baby of the family, I probably just didn't realize how small I was because all the other kids were more capable than me and they were bigger than me. My biological sister was also like able to do way more than I was because she was just a little bit older. And I didn't like that as a kid, but I don't think I had a resentful attitude. I think I was just oblivious to the fact that I was a small kid and I didn't belong on the basketball court, or that I shouldn't be climbing up the trees with all the other kids. Yes, that's what we did in Miami, Florida. Yes, that's why the Floridians are so strange. Yes, yes, yes. But yes, I wanted to do all the things that all the other kids did, and I didn't feel like I was limited by my small size. I used to be on the handlebars of the kids' bicycles against my foster mother's orders, of course. I was roller skating, like not roller blading, but skating, like where they have like the two wheels in the front and the two wheels in the back, and then the emergency brake in the front. I was doing that like at age 5, 6, and 7 with the other kids while they were on their rollerblades because they were older than me, excuse me. I, like I said, I used to jump off or climb on the trees. They would jump off the trees. I didn't get there yet, you know, but I used to do this kind of stuff with the children outside in the street, like for the entire day. The rule was to just get back inside before the street lamps came on, of course. And so I was I guess you could say a little bit of a wild child, but honestly, compared to these actually wild children out here, I wasn't. Just for me, it was probably like the wildest I got to be as a little girl. I know that might sound a little bit sad for some people who got to do like really wild things, but you know, I didn't have that kind of upbringing. I grew up in the church and I had like a southern mom, like a southern foster mom. And so, yeah, the most wild that I got to be was playing in the dirt when we couldn't go play in the sand at the lake or at the beach, I mean. And when I was like on the handlebars or when we went past like a few blocks or streets that we weren't supposed to go to, that was pretty much the wildest that it got for me. But it was pretty fun. And as I said in the last podcast episode, that was like the closest that I got to be to a child. Like all that stopped once I got to the next destination in my journey, which you can read about in part 2 of the book. Yes, once I was reunited with my biological parents, all of that stopped. So I really enjoyed getting to be a wild child. And the point of the poem was to just capture that I had that attitude of like, if you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to do it just so that I can show you that I can and I will, and that I believe in myself. And so when my foster mother was like, no, like she's too small, like get her away from the basketball court. Are you crazy? Like, I was like, no, like I can do it. I was so adamant that I could, that I was like limited by nothing. That's the kind of attitude I had as a kid. Nothing could stop me, not the height, not the thickness of the tree trunk, nor the height of the dang on tree. Nothing would stop me. And I don't know. It's interesting that I had that kind of mentality that even as a kid, but I know that I had it as a kid because I still kind of have that mentality now that like I am only limited by the things I limit myself with, right? And I'm not saying like that, like I'm invincible. I'm not saying, you know, like try to pierce me with something and it won't like break. And I'm not saying nothing crazy like that. I'm just saying like when it comes to what you believe is possible, when it comes to what you can put, what you think you can put your mind to versus what you know is achievable, that makes a very big difference in what you accomplish in your life. It all starts with what you think. It all starts with what you believe about yourself and what you are capable of doing. And even as a little girl, I was like, no, I am going to do it. And if you tell me that I can do something, not because I'm not allowed to, but just because like I can't, because I'm not capable, then I'm more likely to try to show myself that I am capable. And like I said in the poem, I will bloom before you. You know, I don't mean literally though, because some people don't deserve to sit around and stick around and see how you bloom. But yes, just to get some of the questions that I introduced in the last episode into this video, I will go through them really quickly, but I think that I've pretty much summarized this one. It's a pretty succinct poem, so there's not much to say. But yes, question number 1 is what moment or thing inspired the poem? There was not one moment that inspired this poem. The poem Wild Child was inspired by, like I said, the kind of child that I was and the attitude of fearlessness that I had. And I think I wanted to capture this poem, again, like I said with the other poem, Play Pensamientos, I wanted to just capture the kind of child that I was and a little bit of the kind of upbringing that I got to have, like with considering that I was a foster child and I was like only 5, 6, and 7. Obviously, there wasn't. I could only be so wild at that age, right? But yes, the point of the poem was just to capture what it is that I believed as a kid, which was that we are limitless, limitless. And honestly, I would say that like that thought process probably changes as adults beat it out of us. Like over time, I think, well, let me backtrack. Maybe adults don't, not, I'm not saying all adults beat it out of us, like literally. I'm saying that I think we're not born insecure. We are made insecure, and we are made to think that we are incapable and that we are small by the adults around us. And I think we start off with this attitude of I can and I will, or this attitude of I am fearless and I am powerful beyond measure. However, it's the adults around us who tell us otherwise, and it's their children who grow up being bullied by their parents or other kids who go on to influence us to think that we are incapable. And then unfortunately, it isn't until we become young adults or older, mature adults that we realize that we've got a lot of unlearning to do. I think I heard a quote or a saying. Someone said something like, life begins when you start unlearning everything that you learn and you start learning things for yourself. And I think that is pretty true. Not that I would say like that I can pinpoint a time where my life, quote unquote, began due to me learning anything in particular. I think it's more like you enter a phase or a shift in your mindset and you start realizing that you are as capable as you believe that you are, and that your world starts to change through the actions that you take once you change or rearrange your thoughts. So yes, like I think I said in the other video, it all starts there. It all starts with what you think and it starts with what you believe. But yes, question number 3 is, how did writing this poem affect your healing journey or impact the healing journey? I would say that in the writing process and in the healing, in terms of my healing journey, I would say that in writing this poem, it helped me to see once again that I was the kind of person that I see myself being. I already was. I just didn't have the resources at the time, and obviously as a child I didn't have the rights. But I think that initially, like as children, we do have a lot more of a vision for our lives and what we are capable of. Like as a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, but as a high school student, I realized that I wanted to teach what I learned through life, excuse me. But I didn't want the only way for people to learn from me to be in one classroom. I knew that I wanted to teach as a kid, and I knew that I wanted to teach as a high school student, but I didn't want to be a high school teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher confined to a classroom. And it's because I thought the world is your classroom, right? Isn't the world your lesson? Your life is your lesson. Your world is your classroom. That's how I think. And so I wanted to explore quote unquote teaching in a different format. And it's kind of interesting how I went on to write my poetry collection and share the wisdom that I've experienced and gathered. And now I'm essentially kind of like teaching what it is that I've learned. I think that's kind of interesting. And it also kind of shows how, like, as a kid, you have somewhat of an idea. And I'm not saying of what you want to do for your occupation. I mean, I think even as kids, we have somewhat of an idea of what we can see for ourselves, how we see ourselves dedicating our lives, how we see ourselves living. You have somewhat of an idea. And then I think your parents' job is to kind of guide you. It's to offer different experiences and hobbies and skills to you so you can explore what you're good at and explore what comes very easily to you. And then their job as parents is to help push you down that path at a steady enough pace so that when you arrive to your adulthood, you feel more prepared. But again, that's just my opinion. I don't have children, so I'm not saying at all that anybody has to do what I am suggesting. And I will say this, I don't think that you need to have children to know how children should be treated. All you have to do is think about the kind of child that you were and the kind of upbringing that you had. All you have to do is think about how you would have wanted someone to treat you and who you needed when you were a kid. And that should teach you a few things about parenting right off the bat. Okay. Okay, and in terms of how it affected my healing journey, I think that it's this poem, Wild Child, reminded me of who I am. I'm not saying that I'm a wild person, though. I wouldn't consider myself wild by any means. Maybe a little bit adventurous, maybe a bit bold, but wild, I don't think I'm wild. However, I have had an attitude of resilience and an attitude of I can and I will for a very long time. That was actually one of my mantras that I would say to myself in the mirror every single day when I was a sophomore in high school. So yes, on the healing journey and in the writing process, I recognize that like I had that mentality even way back then. And then I started to think, where did it go? Like what happened? And of course, as you can imagine, if you've read my poetry collection or heard a bit of my testimony, what happened is that I went through a lot of trauma and I went through a lot of things that made me become very quiet and very small in terms of like how I tried to make myself. Like I used to just go into every single classroom and try to disappear. And even sometimes in social settings, I try to like disappear in plain sight, almost as if I feel like I'm not capable of like surviving the social setting or the social experience. And I think it comes from being a quote unquote wild child, a bold, courageous child, to then being a battered one, and it does a number on your psyche, and it makes you a shell of yourself for quite some time until you can overcome that. And so in writing this poem, it helped me to recognize that like I had the no that I have the potential to be as bold and courageous and unapologetically so as I was even back then. And I just have to find that. I just have to exercise that muscle otra vez, like once again, because it's still here. It was there even as a kid and it's still here. But yeah, so the final question that I have written down is, what did I learn about myself or in general during the writing process? I think I kind of answered that throughout this. I learned, like I just said, I learned like that I was resilient and that I was bold, and that, of course, as a kid, I was a bit limited in how much of that I could display. However, those characteristics were there even then, and that means that those characteristics are here even today, and that I just have to tap into that and think about what it is that I believed was possible and capable before people started to tell me otherwise, and then I made an agreement with those statements. Because when you're looking for yourself, or when you're looking for a sense of self, that's where you can find it. Turn off all of the noise from other people, all the insecurities and baggage that you carry. Turn all that off. Close your eyes if you have to, write it down if you have to, and just think about what you think of yourself, what you think is possible, and think like there are no limits. Think like life has no filters. You know, like when you go on a housing site and you have all these filters, when you go order food or clothes online or anything, there's all these filters, right? And the more you add those filters, your results change. Well, think like there are no filters. Think like there are no limits in life. And then let your mind start to take you down that road, or up that road rather, of what is possible. And you will see yourself doing what it is you are meant to do in your life. You have to refine that image. You have to exercise that muscle and imagine more and more. And then you take action on what it is that you imagine yourself committing your life to for success and for a sense of self-actualization, like reaching the highest version of yourself. It all starts there. But again, that's my advice. I'm not telling anybody that this is what they have to do at all. That's just my advice, because when I turned off the noise And I stopped thinking about all the negative things that, people in la calle, like people in school, people in my households that I grew up in had to say about me. I think that's when I started to see me. Once I took all that stuff away, I started to just see me and what I thought was possible for me. And I became someone who felt more capable and someone who felt more courageous every time I started to refine that image of myself in my head. And when you get to that point where you know yourself and no one can tell you that you are this or not this or whatever, that's when things start to get better for you in life, as well as, or as long as you take action as well. You have to think, but you have to act as well. But yes, that is all that I would say regarding this poem titled Wild Child. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Things I Never Said podcast. I hope that there are things that resonated with you and interest you. If you have any testimony of your own that you would like to share related to this poem, or even your experience as a foster child or emancipated minor, feel free to share with others, because you never know who you may inform or inspire, and you never know who may inspire you. So yeah, on that note, I will say thank you so much for listening. Tata mi amores, take care.
Gonna give you this mic back, but what I'm gonna say to the ladies that been told that you cannot have, you tell the devil you's a liar.